Welcome back to Spill the TXC with me, your host, Amber. Today's episode is all about cheating revenge stories, and that has to be my favourite topic. A good, solid revenge, especially if that revenge has a twist. And some of these stories today do have an almighty twist. So we've got some jaw-dropping stories from Reddit. I've got one follower submission, which is an exclusive because it's never been told anywhere else before, but here today. For the first time. And I've also, at the end of this episode, I'm going to show you a 4-part mini-series that I did over on TikTok, where part 1 alone got 22 million views. And I don't mean to brag, but I can't not say that without smiling. So it is a cheating revenge story and possibly the best one I've ever heard, if I do say so myself. So I'm going to pop that in at the end. I think you're going to love it. Let me know what you think. This first story is from Reddit. There is a car and I'm going to let the bastard pass. This is a Reddit story from the poster Mama Empath. This happened to me about 1999/2000 when I was 19 to 20 years old. My friend told me that this was the juiciest revenge/karma story he's ever heard of, and that I should post it here. So if you've ever been cheated on by somebody you love, this is for you. I was single after 5 years with my then boyfriend, and had finally mustered the courage to tell my junior high school crush, let's call him DN, for douche nozzle. About the candle I'd been holding for him for the past 7 years, ever since the first time we met. I was still somewhat new to the Pacific Northwest after leaving my home of Alaska, and figured, well, he's in Alaska and I'm here. I'm never moving back, so I might as well let the unspoken thing be spoken, get the answer I'm sure is coming, and move on with my life. I was pretty sure that once I laid down all of my cards, he wouldn't have wanted to be friends with me anymore, or would have said something like, I'm just not into you in that way. I was expecting at most an awkward conversation with him that may have explained my behaviours over the years, but much to my surprise, he reciprocated my expression of sincere love. DN and I had been friends for all of that time, and though I never dropped hints to him about it, I did tell my closest friends at the time. He and I even kissed once during our first school year together, and even though I wanted to, I didn't ever press the issue or pursue him further, giving him the chance to take the lead, which he didn't. His words to me were poetic and so full of promise, including him saying how I always had a thing for you and never knew how to approach you, and I was so afraid you would reject me and I'd be humiliated, and so on. The same kind of stuff I had told him. 7 years later, having not the slightest clue that he was going to react that way at all, it made me question my decision about never moving back. I mean, never? After the phone call professing love for each other, that word never seemed so extreme. If I relaxed that decision, maybe I could have the opportunity for the relationship I'd wanted for so long. I had a really great perk with a family member who was a pilot, and I was able to fly on a buddy pass/standby ticket pretty often. So I decided to fly up to Alaska every couple of weeks to see DN. Once the news got around, everyone in our circle of friends would exclaim, "Oh my God, you and DN. I'd always hoped you two would end up together. You're the perfect couple." I thought it was super cheesy and romantic, but it actually felt validating and nice because that was what I had envisioned and hoped everybody would say about us. I was always very careful to avoid dating or even flirting with anyone I went to school with, for the sake of avoiding interpersonal drama and gossip at school, which would have disrupted so much more than my education. After several months of travelling to see him every couple of weeks, he asked me to marry him, and I said yes, and then, without hesitation, started planning the move back to AK to be together and start our life there in our hometown. I made my plans for the move, packed up all of my belongings and parcel shipped everything I owned. Thankfully, it wasn't much, because I was still so young I didn't own any furniture. DN and I were going to live together at his place, where he had a roommate. Let's call him Bicycle Man, BM for short, who I will never forget, and the reason why is coming up. In the scant number of days before my final flight back up to Anchorage, I started feeling kind of icky and gross, and after several days of that, followed my intuition and took a pregnancy test. I found out I was pregnant, and I was so overjoyed that I called him one evening to tell him about it. There was already a party going on at his place. I spoke with DN briefly and said, "I have some news I want to share with you." And he said, "But first, I have to tell you about this really cool artist chick." And he told me about this girl who came to the party. Let's call her Thought. Yes, a terrible nickname used only because I'm too lazy to think of a better acronym. And it made me laugh when it first occurred to me. I was irked by the way he was talking about her and realized this is not the time for a big reveal. I think I said to DN something like, "Don't do anything you'll regret." He asked me to call him later on to tell him whatever the news was, so I said I would. And then I did. Hours later, whoever answered the phone said that DN was there but couldn't come to the phone right now. And I had this awful stomach-sinking feeling, because I already had an intuitive feeling about what was happening. DN never called me back that evening. I called him the next morning. No answer. I was heartbroken. That evening, I finally got to talk with him and reminded him, "I have news." But he interrupted me to say, "I have to tell you something." And my stomach-sinking feeling was now turning to nausea. He admitted that he cheated on me with Thought, all whilst I was trying to reach him the night before. I hung up the phone and threw up. He didn't call me back to ask what my news was. I called him back later on to verbally berate him, and all he could do was ask for forgiveness and tell me it was a mistake, and that he still wanted me to come there. I told him there was no chance that I would marry him after that. That was not a mistake. It was a choice. I said I would be up to get my things, and then I'd be gone for good. It took every ounce of my emotional strength to verbalize my thoughts without screaming. I miscarried the pregnancy that week. Add that onto the absolute devastation that this person I'd longed for after all of these years didn't actually intend on a committed relationship after proposing to me. And then I had to deal with the immense pain of losing my first pregnancy. And then to top that off, I had to fly up to Anchorage weeks before Christmas to pick up all of the stuff I had already parcel shipped there. Wait for it to arrive, with nowhere else to go but DN's home. I had to face him and be around him, after having my heart thoroughly crushed. I also knew that all of our mutual friends and our families would either learn the truth or would all be told lies if DN tried to save face about his mistake. I didn't know DN to be that kind of person, but then I didn't know him to be a cheater either. So all bets were off when it came to an educated guess about what course of action he would take. So I got on the plane, flew up north to Alaska, and of course, DN didn't remember he told me the day before that he would pick me up at the airport. Or he didn't think I was worth it. Whatever it was the most awful feeling to be forgotten about and left there stranded. Even more humiliating was when an elderly couple at the airport saw me waiting alone, picked up my lost girl vibe and asked me if I was okay. And I lost my calm demeanor, broke down in tears at the airport. I shooed away the well-meaning couple because I couldn't keep my shit together long enough to be gracious about any help they could have offered. I finally got a cab and went out to his place, banged on the door outside and waited until I couldn't feel my fingertips anymore. And the racket finally woke up BM, Bicycle Man, who let me inside. DN was in his room, passed out on his bed. I went to the living room couch and I waited. I didn't know exactly how to confront him, so I just didn't. He already knew how I felt based on our phone call following his confession. I acted like I no longer cared about it, because the last thing I wanted to be seen as was the crazy ex. There was no way I was going to let his behavior and choices besmirch my reputation. So I acted cool and dispassionate, as if it were all just a matter-of-fact end to a relationship. I kept to myself as much as possible. DN must have taken that as some sort of sign that we were just/only friends, as if we never had a relationship, as if he never asked me to marry him. And he had the bright idea to invite Thought over to meet me. I don't know if I'm just not very good at saying the word thought, but it sounds really weird coming from me. Magpie. As it turned out, Deanne told Thot that I was just a friend, and he never told her about our relationship, our engagement, me visiting frequently to see him, me moving there to be with him. It was like I was just erased and discarded. And looking back, this is a very clear case of a narcissist's relationship pattern of idealize, devalue, and discard. Every moment between arriving there and leaving felt like it was just me crying and feeling so incredibly hurt that it broke my whole world. I had sacrificed my family, who had all moved to the Pacific Northwest by that point. I left my job so that I could move back to Alaska and be with Deanne. I was so into the idea of a relationship with him, it didn't even feel like I had sacrificed for the sake of our relationship. But I did, and it hit me in that moment. I regretted leaving them to be with Deanne and his empty promise of love. When the news spread to our mutual friends and his family, nobody could understand why Deanne and I were split up. Everyone understood why I was crying and upset, but nobody really knew what to do with the constant stream of tears. I maintained my composure as being the not crazy ex to the best of my ability. But this all happened in front of people who knew us both for years. They were dumbfounded about Thot and what she was doing with Deanne. They put the puzzle pieces together themselves. I kept my mouth shut and only stated facts when I was asked. Yes, Deanne would rather be with her, so he is with her. And I'm here waiting for my things to arrive so that I can ship them back. And then I'm getting on the next flight out of here. One day out of the total of 2 weeks that I was there. 2 weeks. I think at that point, maybe on day 3, I would have said, forget my stuff, or you ship my stuff back, or maybe keep it for me, I'll come back at a later date. There is no way, 2 weeks. BM, Bicycle Man, came out of his room and saw me and my silent waterfall of tears, and he just said to me, Deanne is a total asshole. If I were you, I'd be crying too. And for some reason that made me feel better about the whole thing. BM was a muscly badass to a young woman like me, and for him to say that made me feel like the world wasn't such a cruel place after all. I still had not told anybody about the pregnancy or the loss, because even though I was grieving and in pain, if I mentioned any of that, I knew I would be treated like the crazy ex who was making up stories to make him feel worse or to make it all about poor me, and I just didn't need any of that bullshit on top of me. I suffered in silence and perfected the art of crying without making a sound so that I wouldn't draw anyone else's attention to my grief. Over those 2 weeks, Deanne invited Thot over frequently. He probably thought it was no big deal to me. He was not thinking about me or how his behavior was affecting me. I was in a state of shock. I never thought he would treat me like that. After I had known him for so long and had never seen him behave in that way. I stayed on the couch whilst the 2 of them had their fun in Deanne's room, within earshot. This is kind of like you're punishing yourself here. Why on earth was you staying? I didn't have the energy to confront Deanne or to argue as to why he was doing something that was so cruel and heartless. If he didn't know that already, me telling him wasn't going to teach him the basics of empathy. I was so angry at him that I wanted to hurt him even worse than what he had done to me. So before I left, here we go. I concocted a plan to poison his new relationship with Thot. This is where the revenge plot comes into play. If this is the reason she stayed, I'm all for it. Absolutely. I am bisexual, and I knew that Thot was at least flexible in that regard, and obviously she was willing to move fast with someone. So, at yet another party, a seemingly regular occurrence at this house, I got Thot all to myself before she got drunk, for long enough to seduce her. I shut both of us in Deanne's room. Meanwhile, everybody else was too drunk to even notice that anything could have been happening in there. Deanne was occupied with the guests and probably didn't even notice that she was missing. After we were finished, I told her why I was there, and I told her about my history with Deanne. Then I told her, he proposed to me and then did what he did with you, after I've known him for years. Just imagine what he'll do to you. Suddenly she understood why I'd been so somber when I was introduced to her. She had no idea that I was any more than just an innocent friend of Deanne's. She didn't know why I was there in Alaska or why I was waiting for boxes. She didn't know anything. She felt profoundly guilty and regretful, despite the fact she didn't know any better. She had been deceived, and I had been too gracious to lose my cool or cause a scene at a house party or in front of anyone else. When I was in private with her, I told her everything, including how I had pined after him since I was 12 years old because my adolescent hormones didn't know better. Deanne walked in on us and must have assumed that nothing was wrong. There was nothing violent or terrible happening in the moment, and plus he was drunk. So there was no confrontation, again. The party went on, and Thought left. The next day, Deanne asked me what I was doing with Thought. I said to him, "She was an easy piece of ass, and I'm not surprised you were able to get busy with her the same day you met her. I just happened to do the same thing you did." Oh. I didn't actually see her that way. I just said that to him because it was the most demasculating thing I could think of. The look on his face seemed to suggest that his dick had shriveled and inverted into his body. He looked more mortified than I've ever seen him. I still played my poker face. He didn't know what to say after that, so he said nothing and changed the subject. I made him feel just as small and insignificant as he had made me feel. Mission accomplished. Or so I thought, but there's more. I got my belongings finally and shipped them all straight back to where they came from. I got myself on another flight out of there a day or so later. Didn't ever see Thought again. And I didn't hear from Deanne again for the next 5 years. 5 years later, I was married. I had just learnt that week that I was pregnant with my first child, and I got an email from Deanne. He tracked me down through social media back in 2005. He said that he wanted to catch up with me, and so I obliged him with a phone call, thinking I was going to gloat about being married and having a kid or some shit. Deanne told me all about the karma that went down after I left. He said you didn't go crazy whilst you were here, but whatever you did planted a seed that grew into something that destroyed my life. Perhaps my intentions to avenge my dead fetus invited my guardian angels, or demons, maybe more likely, to intercede the situation. Karma in order of appearance. Number 1. Thought cheated on him with his best friend, and then moved in with a dude only 2 weeks after I'd left. Ouch. Number 2. He got fired from his job on Christmas Eve. His boss was another mutual friend who heard about what he did to me and decided he didn't want the guy working at his video store anymore. Number 3. His truck broke down in front of an electrical station. Got impounded. He didn't have enough money to get it out since he lost his job, so he lost his truck too. And that's pretty bad when you live in a place like Alaska in the middle of winter. Number 4. His family caught wind of what went down with me and disowned him. I thought that one was pretty extreme, like what did they hear? I never actually found out, but just chalked it up to karma. Number 5. After Thought was gone, his remaining friends, unsurprisingly, threw another drinking party at his place. Except this time, they got Deanne wasted drunk and then beat the crap out of him and threw him out of his own home into a snowstorm and locked him out. He took refuge with a neighbor, but later on had to leave the state because he had been shunned by all of his remaining friends. He had no family, no job, no friends, no truck, and now was single, without even a thought to lean on. When we spoke, he had been living in Texas and rethinking his life and wanted to know how I was doing after our engagement, which has been crossed out, and then in, what are these? Friendship in quotations, ended. And that was when I decided that that was the right time to tell him about the baby we could have had. And that's when he started to cry. I told him how much it sucked for me to feel like I couldn't have told him about it before, for reasons mentioned above. And then I heard his full-on ugly cry. He was sobbing and couldn't stop apologizing. He said, "I had no idea you were pregnant." I felt a momentary indignant rage, but regained my poker face moment. In my matter-of-fact, emotionless response, we had sex, so it's not like it was impossible for that to happen. I tried to tell you, but at the time it was more important for you to confess your horrible choice than to listen to my news. You didn't have any idea that I was pregnant because you didn't care to know. More sobs on the other end of the line, more apologies than I've ever heard in my life from anyone. I ended our call by saying it's really okay. I don't hate you. I wanted to say I pity you, but held my tongue. Things are better for me now. I'm married and we just found out that we're pregnant with our first child. Anyway, it's been nice catching up with you and finding out what's happened with your life. Sorry to hear it's been so difficult. Let's keep in touch. He didn't. I don't know why he bothered contacting me in the first place, because he must have had some idea how that call was going to go down, but he probably wasn't counting on finding out that he could have been a father and we could have had a family together. If only he hadn't crushed the heart of someone who actually cared about him. In hindsight, that relationship was nothing more than me confusing his charm, his words, and more words, and my infatuation and pining away for actual love. I spent so much time wondering and questioning what I had done to deserve him doing all of that to me, when I didn't realize that he didn't do any of that because of me or to punish me for any reason. He did all of that because the only person he'd been thinking about the whole time was himself. It took me many more years before I would learn how to identify narcissistic behavior, and now, looking back, I realized that I narrowly escaped getting myself stuck in Alaska and romantically committed to a person who has little capability for empathy and doesn't feel remorse for when he wrongs someone. I learned how to get revenge by maintaining my grace and composure, stating only facts, and keeping my emotions to myself and my demeanor together, just long enough to plant doubt in the heart of the new/other woman. 5 years after he crushed my heart, he cried enough to fill a bottle with his tears, and my satisfaction poured it over the flowers on the grave of our tiny dead fetus. I'm sorry, baby. I don't really know what to say about that ending. That actually made me ping my nail off. That's made me feel a bit weird. That was an ending. This next Reddit story was posted by Cursed Flowers. Found out my partner of 6 years has been cheating on me on dating apps and hooked up with people when I was overseas recently. And sadly, over a year period prior. It's not the first time. I know. Shame on me for not leaving back then. As they say, cheaters will always cheat. And I've had to learn the hard way that trying to forgive him was never going to work out. I caught him through obvious signs of projection of him constantly going through my phone, trying to catch me doing the wrong thing whenever I had my back turned and left my phone unattended. I pretended I didn't notice, smiled and carried on with life as if nothing was wrong. I decided to play at that game as I saw him deleting apps when I came home one day. I downloaded every dating app I could think of on my phone and logged in using his phone number, and used his phone to grab the verification numbers to sign into his own accounts when he wasn't looking. Surprise, surprise, I found a gold mine of evidence. That is so smart. I wouldn't even think of doing that on my own phone. I would think I just need to check his phone. We should bank that. I documented every affair, every engagement, whilst staying quiet and preparing to pull the rug from under him. Whenever he got a new message or match, my phone would ping. I let him believe I was so naive that the messages he were getting right next to me were from his sick mother. During this time, I quietly started to downsize my belongings, looked for housemates, potential properties to move in, and prepped my share of a final lease clean, all whilst monitoring his affairs he so cunningly thought he was getting away with. Whenever sex came into the question, I made excuses that I was simply too tired. I slowly pushed him away, and I could tell he was getting confused that I wasn't begging for his attention or affection like I used to anymore. The more I did this, the more he actually tried to put in effort. He couldn't stand that I was matching his energy and efforts after years of manipulation and me allowing myself to be a doormat. Then the nasty comments and bullying started again, to tear down my self-esteem, to submit to his need for power over me. I didn't react. I just pretended I didn't even hear him and went about my daily business like nothing happened. I reconnected with friends I'd pushed away and neglected who warned me tirelessly to leave this man a long time ago, and worked my ass off to save up for a bond and moving costs. He hated this switch in dynamic and change of routine. When the time was right, I signed a lease and took 2 days off work whilst he was at a conference, and I just packed up my shit and left without a word and sent him every screenshot I'd built up without a word and just blocked him. I messaged all of his dates on the apps, explaining the lies he told them all about being single or in an open relationship, how he had been cheating on me the whole time. Most were horrified. They ended their flings with him immediately and went absolutely off at him. His mum called me frantically 4 days later, trying to talk me into taking him back, saying he's suicidal, he can't afford to live in our old house alone, that he would be evicted and has nowhere to go at such short notice, that me doing this made him miss his flights and ruined his presentation at the conference, and now his job is looking at firing him. I sent her the screenshots and calmly said, I owe him nothing. This man never respected me, and he doesn't deserve notice or respect of negotiations to get out of this mess. He created this, and he needs to accept accountability and recognize that you can't behave the way he did without consequences. This had to be the most satisfying way to walk away from a toxic and abusive relationship. I'm 99% sure he would have preferred it if I went off at him so that he could play the victim and paint me as a psycho bitch. This had to be the most satisfying way to walk away from a toxic and abusive relationship. I'm 99% sure he would have preferred if I went off at him so that then he could play the victim and paint me as a psycho bitch. But instead he made himself look like the psycho to all of his friends, his colleagues, and his family. And there's an edit. I bloody love when there's an edit. Or an update, not an edit. There's an update. Met up with his mum over the weekend. She only brought his dad with her to have a chat. We compared stories on what my ex had been lying to us about, inconsistencies in his whereabouts, and joined the dots on when he was on dates with other women, when he said he was somewhere else. They were pretty horrified and livid, to say the least. Apparently, he's never even bought them a birthday, Christmas, Father's or Mother's Day present his whole life, and they are baffled at how much money and effort he's throwing at random girls just to get laid. The screenshots I sent her really painted a picture on who their son really is when he's not putting on an act and lying to everybody that cared and loved him. His mum was never sick. He's sick for lying about that. How you could, even if you don't believe in fate, if there is just the smallest percentage of a chance that you could tempt fate by saying that, you're sick. You're just sick. She's pissed off that the money she sent him for psychology appointments, which I didn't know about, by the way, was spent on extravagant dates, drugs, and alcohol instead. He didn't get fired like he was making it out to be. He just had to pay for a second return flight from the one he missed out of his own pocket. So they've decided to cut off all financial help with bills, insurance, and debts, and make him live through the consequences of his own actions and take more responsibility in life, considering he's in his mid-30s and carrying on like an incapable teenager. They agree that despite him being their son, I've done the right thing and kept apologising on behalf of him, and have offered any support with furnishing my new house, as I don't have all of the appliances I need just yet. I politely declined, but thanked them for their offer. Their next plan is to try to get him into rehab to clean up his act. I love that they offered to help her with furnishing her flat as well. I think that's amazing. And I wish that she'd have accepted, because whilst he's having all of the financial help taken away from him and almost given to her, that would have just been another blow. But respect to her, she is an independent woman. I would have taken it. This is our last Reddit episode of the episode before I go into episode of the episode. This is the last Reddit story of the episode before I go into our exclusive follower submission and then the viral TikTok story that I'm gonna add to the end of this video. So this one, the original poster is OK Pudding 6413. All right, buckle up for this one, Reddit. 8 years ago, I was married to a guy I thought was my ride or die. We had a baby right away and I was over the moon. But then it all went to hell. He started cheating on me with his students, randoms he'd met online, even his exes. I was at home. struggling to keep our kid fed whilst he was blowing our money on these women. When I found out, I was gutted, but I didn't drag him through the court. I just divorced his sorry ass and moved on. And he thought he'd won, like he'd got away with it. Oh, honey, no. 6 months after the divorce, I decided to take control. I slept with his colleagues, his best friends, people he thought were his. It wasn't just about hooking up. It was about hitting him where it hurt. And then I turned up the heat. I reached out. I spent a night with him, made him think we might get back together. The next morning, I dropped a bomb, told him everything from his betrayal to what I'd done. The look on his face was priceless. And I walked out, head high, leaving him to choke on his own ego. But wait, there's more. 2 months later, I told him I was pregnant and wanted us to be a family again. He ate it up, sending me $400 every month for 9 months, thinking he was supporting our baby. Surprise? Dude, there was no baby. After 9 months, I told him the baby died during childbirth and ghosted him for good. Harsh? Maybe. But I was scraping by, sometimes starving whilst he was living it up with his side pieces during our marriage. I deserved to come out on top. And now I'm sitting pretty and I feel amazing. I got my revenge and it was sweet. He's out there humiliated, broke and probably still reeling, whilst I'm thriving. No regrets, no looking back, just me, my kid, and the satisfaction of knowing I played him at his own game. I don't know what I don't know my response to that one. I'm kind of torn between the need for petty revenge and my morals. I'm going to conclude that story with, sometimes you gotta play dirty. Are you ready for an exclusive? You will not hear this story anywhere else. It is specifically being told here and only here on Spill the TXC. The sender has titled this story Work IT, and I'm glad I specified and read the story first, otherwise I would have introduced it as Work It. So let's get into it. This happened a few years ago, and to this day, I still can't believe how it all unfolded. My boyfriend and I had just come back from a lovely weekend away. He had taken loads of photos, and later that evening he airdropped them all over to my phone. Amongst all the scenic pictures and cute couple snacks, you're a snack. Snaps was a selfie, one that I hadn't seen before. Now on the surface there was nothing wrong with it, but it wasn't just any selfie. It was that kind of selfie, the kind he used to send me when we first got together, the kind taken from just the right angle, with just the perfect lighting, trying just a little too hard to impress. The honeymoon period had been over for a long time, and he certainly wasn't sending photos like that to me anymore, and my gut immediately started screaming. That night, whilst he was fast asleep in bed next to me, I picked up his phone, and sure enough, my instincts were right. He had saved another woman's number under Work IT. The only problem was that their conversation had absolutely nothing to do with work or IT. It was full of flirting, compliments and plans to meet up. That selfie he had accidentally airdropped me, it had been taken specifically for her. I quietly put his phone back exactly where I found it. I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I didn't even mention it. Instead, I waited. And by the time Friday night rolled around, I had a plan. Once he was asleep again, I took his phone, blocked the real Work IT number, and changed my own number to Work IT in his contacts. Then I sat back and I waited. The next morning, he started messaging her, only he was messaging me. For the entire weekend, I carried on the conversation pretending to be his mistress. At times, we were literally sitting on the same sofa whilst he smiled at his phone, completely oblivious that he was flirting with his own wife. I learned everything I needed to know. Then, on Sunday, I decided it was time for the final question. I typed, "Where is this going? What do you actually want with me long term, and "Are you planning on leaving your wife?" And without hesitation, he replied, "I want you and only you, now and forever." And that was all I needed. That night, whilst he slept peacefully beside me, I got to work. I shoved tins of tuna deep inside his Xbox. I cut holes in every single item of clothing he owned. I poured bleach all over his car seats, and every power tool he treasured was submerged in water. Petty? Absolutely. Deserved? Well, I'll let you decide. Before I left, I messaged the real mistress from my own phone. I simply told her, "Here's all yours. Enjoy your smelly little pig." And then, because life has a funny sense of timing, I caught an old booty call from over 10 years earlier. We met up the following day for a drink, and let's just say I didn't spend another minute crying over my cheating husband. I love this woman. The next morning I went to the gym before he'd even woken up. My phone exploded. Call after call. Voice message after voice message. Apparently, he'd discovered his destroyed wardrobe, his ruined Xbox, his bleached car, his waterlogged tools. I didn't answer a single one. Not one. The only thing I regret is not being a fly on the wall at work when his mistress confronted him about why he'd suddenly blocked her all weekend, only for him to realise the number he had actually been messaging wasn't hers at all. Once he left for work, I went back, grabbed my essentials and walked out for good. I left everything else behind. I never answered another phone call, never replied to another message, never looked back. As far as I know, he and his mistress never actually became a proper couple. In fact, according to my solicitor, he's still dragging his feet and refusing to sign our divorce papers. So, if karma is listening, I can only hope that he falls into a very deep pit in the middle of nowhere, and as his wife, maybe I'd finally inherit everything he owns. Now that would be a happy ending. I hope you were all taking notes from that lady, because her revenge was silent but powerful. And I truly believe that if somebody can cheat on you, if they can step out on you like that, they were never yours to begin with. So don't try and hold them there, just let them go. In fact, hold the door open for them. They were never yours. And there is somebody else out there who would treasure everything that they took for granted. If you guys have any stories or exclusives that you wouldn't mind me reading out on my channel, I would love to tell your stories. So please send them in to toxicstories@outlook.com. And on that note, I am now going to pass you over to my 4-part viral TikTok story that is called "I Gave My Husband a Severe Allergic Reaction on Purpose." I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think in the comments. I love you. Bye. I gave my husband an extremely dangerous allergic reaction by feeding my homemade banana bread to his mistress. And you know what? I'm not even sorry. 2 weeks ago, I came home from work early. Now, I didn't bother to let my husband know because, to be honest, I didn't expect him home. I didn't expect anybody home. My plan was to have a bath, not tell anyone that I'd come home from work early, just relax for an hour, and then my husband would get home. What actually happened was I turned up home to find my husband and our friend in the kitchen, just laughing. Now, there wasn't too much to be suspicious about at first. They were both fully dressed. There was nothing untoward going on that I could see. And when I arrived, my friend's facial expression didn't change. She seemed very happy to see me. She threw her arms around me, cuddled me, and spent the next few hours talking to me. So everything seemed fine. It was only once she left that I kind of internally started to question how long she had been there. And what were they laughing about? Because when I walked into the kitchen, I wasn't involved in the conversation. Nobody included me in the joke. We just started our own conversation. So it was playing on my mind a little bit. And then last week, my husband told me he needed to work late. This is not a regular occurrence. My husband never works late and doesn't really have the kind of job where you would need to work late. So it made no sense. I didn't question it. And then at the beginning of this week, my husband worked late. Again, I had my internal questions, but I said nothing. I need to reiterate that my husband's job is not the sort of job where you would need to work late. It's the kind of job where you finish at 5 o'clock and you forget about work. You don't need to think about it until you're there the next day. It's that kind of job, you know? So he calls me yesterday about lunchtime to let me know that he needs to work late. And I said, okay. And I don't know what came over me, but I had a plan. I had a terrible, terrible plan. My husband is highly allergic to bananas. So I went and bought some bananas. I made banana bread, and then I let my friend know that I was going to be dropping some banana bread round. And she was happy. Of course, who doesn't want homemade banana bread other than my husband? There's no way that he's going to come home and have a reaction in our house. I was on my hands and knees scrubbing that kitchen. It was sparkling. There were no remnants of banana in that kitchen. So I drop the banana bread round to my friend's house. And I leave. I get a call about 4 hours later. My husband had an extremely dangerous allergic reaction to bananas. I make my way to the hospital. And when I get there, the doctor starts to question me on, his allergies, what we have in the house, this, that, the other. In front of my husband, I say, Doctor, I don't know how this has happened. The only thing he's allergic to is bananas. And yes, I did make banana bread today, but I have completely blitzed our kitchen. And that aside, he's not even been home yet, Doctor. You see, I made this banana bread for our friend and I dropped it round there earlier and then this is the point when I turn to look at my husband. And I say, and I have no idea how it could transfer from her to him. How could that happen? It's safe to say that he knew exactly where I stood at that point. I didn't say another word. I turned on my heel and I left the room. And on my way out of the hospital, who walks in? We are literally walking directly towards each other. The friend. See, I'm not normally the revenge type of girl. I'm normally the cut you out of my life, I will never have a need to see you again kind of girl. But obviously, I was in a relationship with him, so it was quite important that I did get my revenge. But her, I had nothing to say. So as we're walking towards each other, she calls me. She calls me to get my attention, to say hello, and to ask how he's doing. I look at her, and I tell her he's allergic to bananas. I'm surprised you didn't know. In fact, you should probably clean your teeth and wash your hands before you go up to see him. Clearly they think I'm stupid. Clearly they think I would never catch on to what they were doing. But I did catch on. And nearly killed him. So I get home from the hospital, and I do what any sane woman would do. I make myself a margarita. I go out into the garden and push the wheelbarrow into our bedroom, and then I just start loading it with his shit. And then I wheel it out to the front, one-handed mind because I've still got my margarita in the other. Priorities. So I wheel his stuff out to the front, and I literally air his dirty laundry all up and down my road. My neighbours had a field day. I reached the back of his first wardrobe, and sitting there, all smug and tucked away like it had nothing to hide, was an A4 brown envelope. Now I was curious, of course, but this wasn't my property. So I put it in the wheelbarrow and wheeled it out to the front. Like fuck I did. I dived into that envelope quicker than a Love Island contestant into a brand deal. And what I found inside were 2 plane tickets to Costa Rica. One in her name and one in his name. A romantic little getaway, was it? I was just about to tear these plane tickets in half when something caught my eye. My heart actually stopped. I recognised those last 4 digits. They were from the account that I had opened for my inheritance money. The savings that my gran left me when she passed. The money that I'd had sitting in this account for years, untouched. I thought the money was locked away safely. with the bank card in our home safe, which clearly isn't very bloody safe. So I took a deep breath, and I called my neighbour Janine, because her son is a solicitor. And if anybody was going to help me out of this situation, it would be him. Within 48 hours, Janine's son had filed the right forms, contacted the travel company, and got the tickets refunded back into my inheritance bank account. He helped me freeze the account, reclaim the stolen money, and most importantly, he drafted a beautifully worded letter threatening legal action for fraud. That letter is currently sitting in both of their inboxes. Oh, and I made sure to copy in his work email too. Oops. And as for me, I got back in the kitchen and I baked. I baked a banana bread for my neighbour and her son to say thank you. And I took it over there, and you know what she said to me? She said, "This is the best banana bread I have ever tasted." Well, it is a killer recipe. Do you guys remember my banana bread saga? You know, where I suspected my husband of sleeping with my friend. So one night when he said he was working late and I thought he wasn't really working late, I made my best friend a banana bread knowing that my husband is highly allergic to bananas. And a couple of hours later, he ends up in hospital with an extremely dangerous allergic reaction. Do you remember that? Then when I was packing his stuff up, I found 2 tickets to Costa Rica, one in his name and one in her name. I then discovered that these tickets were bought with my inheritance account. So naturally, I went to my neighbour's son, who is a brilliant solicitor. And in the legal world, he absolutely kicked my ex's ass. So I thought that was it. I thought that was the end of it. But turns out it wasn't. Because, oh my God, have I got an update for you. A few weeks ago, I was just minding my business, living my best peace and quiet life, when I get a message from her, the ex-best friend. She sends me this voice message where she's emotional, she's sobbing, she's rambling. And then she drops the line of the fucking century. She tells me that he's left her, that she had no idea he paid for the tickets from my inheritance money, that she actually transferred him and paid for her own ticket because he told them that they were paying for themselves, that they were going halves, that he didn't have the funds to support her right now. So this guy actually profited from this booking. She then goes on to say, "So since it was reimbursed to your account, do you mind giving me my money back?" Naturally, I said a very prolonged, deeply cathartic no. But that's just a tiny side piece of information. That's not even the update. Imagine a few days later, I hear from my ex. Not a heartfelt apology. Not closure in any way. Not, "Oh, hey, I nearly died on your best friend's sofa." No. I get a legal letter from my ex-husband claiming half of my inheritance. You know that inheritance that he stole? He's claiming it as marital property. Marital fucking property! Enter Janine's son, the Thanos of small claims disputes, the John Wick of local solicitors, the man who can smell fraudulent nonsense like a shark smells blood. Now here is where the update really begins. Janine's son discovered that my ex didn't just try to claim my inheritance. He also attempted to open a joint line of credit in my name after he left. And the only reason he was declined was because he misspelled my middle name. Twice. He had also been forwarding his personal bills. I'm talking gym membership, Amazon, bloody Xbox Live, to my old email address, the one we used for all of our wedding planning. He thought that they would automatically get paid somehow. They didn't. Collections then got involved, and guess whose name he put as the secondary spouse guarantor? Mine. This guy was still trying to use me. So Janine's son, my solicitor, he is going through every single document he can find all the way back to the airline refund that he got me. And that is where he noticed something. My ex-husband used his rewards card to earn points on the Costa Rica booking. So not only did he steal my inheritance, he also stole her money and tried to put me in debt, and earned himself nearly 400,000 travel points in the process. Fast forward through forms, filings, emails, and one spectacularly embarrassing Zoom meeting where my ex tries to argue that technically he emotionally supported me through my grandmother's death, so he is entitled to a share of the inheritance. Spoiler, he was at a golf weekend, and when I phoned him sobbing to tell him the news of my grandmother, he chose to stay at his golf weekend. So then we get to the verdict. And this is truly the best bit. Not only is he told that he has zero claim to my inheritance, he's ordered to repay her ticket money, my solicitor fees, and chef's kiss, the cash value of 40,000 travel points that he illegally earned, back to me. Now, I live in a very small town and word gets about. So rumour has it that he never ended up paying her ticket money back. Because rumour also has it that they never actually broke up. Make of that what you will. And yes, before you ask, I did thank Janine's son. Again and again and again. But not with banana bread. These have all heard the banana bread saga by now, and to be honest, I thought it was going to stop at 2 parts. I didn't think I'd be making a 3rd part, but we had the update and I couldn't not tell you after you'd been on that journey with me. So this isn't a 4th part to the story. This is just bits that I've missed out. So since posting part 3, I've had a lot of questions on one particular thing. And so this bonus video is going to be called Janine's son. And I'm absolutely buzzing to tell you this part of the story because there has been something that I have had to keep very close to my chest because Janine wasn't comfortable for it to come out. I am using a fake name for her, by the way. She thought that if I exposed this little bit of information, that people would be able to figure out who she was and her identity would be a free-for-all, and she just wasn't ready for that. But last night, after showing her how well the story's done, she said to me, Amber, fuck it, just tell it. So stick around to the end of this story because I'm going to tell it. I want to start this story by just explaining a little bit about my attraction to Janine's son. My ex-husband was very much the sort of man who would stand in the middle of the front room holding the remote that's not working, and he would say to me, can you help me fix this? What can you do about this? When can you do it? It was all very much like, I guess like I'd adopted a son that I really didn't fucking want. But Janine's son, on the other hand, he is very much like, I got this. Leave it with me. I've got you. Like, I've got it. Don't touch it. This is mine. I'm going to take care of it. And that is so fucking sexy. Now, once everything was finalised and he had sorted everything with the ex, my neighbour, Janine, she called me and she said, we've got a few more documents for you to sign. Do you want to come over? I nearly said his name then. I'm not doing that. I'm going to come over tonight about 7 p.m. and sign the couple of documents that are remaining. So I said, yeah, of course. I goes over at 7 p.m. to see the table fully laid, candles lit, and a banana bread in the middle, with a little note by it that says, this is where it all started. She is such a romantic. She would say she is the least meddling person, but she meddled. She meddled. She leaves, and I could have left, but I knew what was happening. I wanted it, so I stayed. And within 30 seconds of her leaving, he arrived. And he had a little look around, like sized the place up, instantly knew what was going on. And he chose to stay too. And I guess that was the true beginning of everything. Although what I will say is that banana bread was awful. Janine is not a baker. She cannot bake, but she can match make. This is the best bit. Okay. I couldn't say this for, nearly a year of this story going on. I couldn't say this, but she's finally ready for me to reveal this little bit of information. The reason that Janine was so intent on being on my side, on helping me fight, on getting her son involved, on eventually setting me up with her son, is because my ex-husband is Janine's ex-stepson. And my ex-husband's dad did something almost identical to Janine. And we consider this a joint revenge. Shout out to Janine. And for everybody with your quick maths, because I know there's a lot of you out there, yes, that does mean that Janine's son was once stepbrothers with my ex. Keep it in the family, right?